Today we are taking a look at a very cool MIDI keyboard. And as you can see today, I have it hooked up to my Yamaha SEQTRAK. I'm not using it with a DAW right now, and I want to tell you why I think this might be the perfect MIDI keyboard if you are looking for a companion to one of your synths or a groovebox or something like that. It's got a couple unique features from other keyboards that I think you'll be intrigued by. But first, enjoy this chill lo-fi beat session, and then we'll start talking about these features. Alright, so this is the Sonido Tempo Key 25. Out of the box, we get quite a few accessories. We get a nice carrying case, as well as a MIDI dongle, a power USB adapter, a really nice orange USB cable, and a USB-A to USB-C adapter. It also comes with a cleaning cloth because this thing will collect fingerprints over time for sure, but it does have a very beautiful aesthetic, almost like those retro Nintendo 64 controllers. Translucent purple, very cool. And on the surface level, it's got some familiar features that we've come to expect from mini MIDI keyboards today. Pads, keys, and knobs, with some additional buttons for transport control, switching banks, an arpeggiator, note repeat, a transpose function, and a nice little screen right here, which we're going to talk a lot about. Because I want to hone in on one specific feature of this controller, and that is the ability to change MIDI CCs right from the controller. What does that even mean? Well, take my setup for example here. If I play the keys right now, that sound that you're hearing is coming from Synth 1 on the SEQTRAK. If I wanted to play Synth 2, I would have to change MIDI channels, right? I can do that right here on the keyboard by holding main, pressing the keys, and changing the MIDI channel. I'm going to go in more depth on what's happening on the screen here in a moment, but just to demonstrate for you, we've changed channels to now control another synth. Now, most MIDI keyboards do that. However, there are a lot of parameters we might want to change or perform with on the SEQTRAK, as you saw in that earlier performance. Not only that, but each one of these drum sounds needs to send on its own individual drum channel to correspond to the drums here on the SEQTRAK. This is not just interesting for SEQTRAK users, this is interesting if you have any other kind of groovebox that has MIDI CC mapping or multiple channels for different types of instruments. Because everything you need to do to set that up can be done with no computer. So let me zoom in here for you all, get in real close to the controller. I want you to be able to hopefully see that screen. I can change the function and the CCs of any of these buttons or knobs. Let me show you what that looks like for a pad. So right now the pad is my kick drum, but I might want to change that. So if I hold down this main knob and then I press pad 1, I now get the options for pad 1. I can change the type of button this is, whether it's going to be a note or a control change button. I can change what channel it sends on. That will determine for me whether this is going to be the kick or some other drum. Here, let's change it to snare, which I know is on channel 2. I can change which note it's sending on. We need to be on C4, channel 2, and now I have a snare. And these are both now snares, which is kind of redundant. So the function of being able to change that right on the controller is very convenient. Let's go ahead and change that back to channel 1. Save that. And now we have our kick mapped. So I went through and did that for each of these drums, meaning I could have a pad for every single drum on the SEQTRAK. Now there's only 7 drums on the SEQTRAK, so interestingly enough, I'm going to use pad 8 as a CC, and if I play back a pattern here, we've got all of our drums playing. Pressing pad 8 will actually take our kick out. No more kick. Bring the kick back in. No software required, though they do make a software interface for the tempo key, which you could get nitty-gritty with the mappings, but I just think it's a little bit magical that we can do this right from the controller without needing software at all, because after all, this setup right here is a DAWLESS setup. I shouldn't need a computer for it, and now I don't even need a software editor to map my keyboard. You can also do this for the knobs. So I've actually created my own custom mappings for these knobs. And on knob 1 here, I can actually change the modulation for synth 2. Now that's pretty convenient, but there's one more level of convenience to it. Let's zoom in close again. So if I just turn this knob right on the screen, I can see that that's controlling CC 108, which is the modulation for synth 2. It's on channel 9, which is the channel that corresponds to synth 2. And it shows me the value. But if you notice, the value goes from 0 only up to 30. And that's something we have control over here on the Sonido tempo key as well. I can change the same things as I did with the knobs, the CC function, the channel number, and then I can change the minimum and maximum value, because when I push this modulation effect too far, let's see if we had the full range here. If I prod this all the way up from 0 to 127, I can save that. It does sound kind of cool with the modulation cranked like that, but it's not super useful for me in the context of the beat that we were just making. So instead of me having to be super precise and find that sweet spot around 30%, I can just set that to the maximum. And again, being able to do that right from the controller is very, very convenient. And each one of these knobs has a unique mapping. I control the delay on the snare, for instance. I control the overall beat repeat. Let's see, a high pass filter and a low pass filter. Filter for synth 1. And a couple other effects. Now, I'm not explaining this to you so that you can go and copy my mappings. I'm explaining it to you because I want you to go and try to make your own mappings for your MIDI keyboard and consider the tempo key if the convenience of this MIDI editing right from the device is appealing to you. And how would you go about this? Well, in the manual for the SEQTRAK, we actually have a whole list of the MIDI CCs and how they correspond to each of the functions on the SEQTRAK. So I was just able to match up this chart with my mappings here on the controller, and it was just that easy. I really wish, though, that the SEQTRAK had mappable CC for the transport controls, because we do have that here on the tempo key, and I'm not able to utilize it, not because the tempo key won't allow me, but because the SEQTRAK doesn't have the transport controls, unfortunately. And maybe that sounds like a minor feature, but I do think Sonido had put some thought into this being a keyboard geared towards not only DAW users, but also hardware users. We've got the MIDI out jack the Type-C USB, but also a DC 5-volt port here. This allows us to not need USB, not need connection to a computer. This would actually allow me to use the USB to connect to a device like the SEQTRAK and control it via MIDI over USB if I wanted to, but also power the device through the separate power port. And the adapter they include for that is super convenient because, again, I don't need to plug it into a computer. I can plug it into a USB power bank or something. I've got a couple things I wish they would improve on the tempo key though. One is the ability to switch between instruments is great. I just hold down main, press the keys, and I can change what channel we are going to be sending on. So I can change to the other instrument. However, I do have to navigate a little bit of a menu for that. When I go into this functionality, hold main, press the keys, the first option in this menu I'm given is the curve. So it's great that we can adjust the velocity curve of the keys. However, in the midst of a performance, I have to go from the velocity curve to the channel and then press enter again and enter again to save. So it's just like one extra step, and I just wish that the MIDI channel came before the curve, so you don't have to navigate a menu mid-performance. Now we do have an arpeggiator and note repeat here. However, unfortunately, even though we have tap tempo, the tempo key doesn't have the ability to sync from either an external DAW or external gear. We're only able to tap the tempo in and kind of try to match it. So I really wish we could clock sync with the tempo key K25. But especially if you are a DAWless user, or maybe you just like the color purple, the tempo key K25 might be for you. Like I said, I've never seen a mini MIDI keyboard in this form factor, in this price range, where you can actually just adjust the MIDI CCs and the MIDI programming right from the device with no software required. So if you have more questions about this keyboard, please let me know in the comments down below. I'm going to be making more videos with this keyboard as time goes on. Let me know if you see any room for improvement here, or if you find the MIDI CC mapping as cool as I do. That's going to be it for now. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been TAETRO. Have a good one.